Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of CPAC Live. I've just come back to town from the Tulsa Rally, which was awesome. As many of you know, that I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, which is less than 3 hours away from the Tulsa Rally. It was great to be with all of these great Trump supporters, including some of his surrogates like Diamond and Silk, and so many of the Black voices for Trump, which I was lucky enough to fly down with and just have great conversations about the meaning of Juneteenth and what Blacks in America today are facing and why they love what they're hearing from President Trump and how they were the beneficiaries of this great Trump economy, which we have to get back on track. There's been a little press about the Tulsa Rally and the fact that the crowd was not as big as anticipated. I will tell you, I was there. It was pretty packed except for the upper rafters of the arena, and I think there's a reason for that. And like with most things, I don't think most people in the media are getting it right. I think there's been so much angst and concern over the fact that our cities have literally been lit on fire. St. John's Church was lit on fire right across from the White House. These statues are getting ripped down left and right. They're going to take down a statue of Teddy Roosevelt in New York City. The president who dined in the White House for the very first time in our history with an African-American, Booker T. Washington. That statue's coming down. With all of this Antifa and Black Lives Matter foment and this effort to defund police, I know a lot of people decided not to go because they just worried about violence. 3 people, members of my family, were going to go to the rally, but at the end, it was just too much uncertainty. The other thing is there had so many people request tickets that actually caused a lot of people not to go because they thought they wouldn't even be able to get near the joint. And I can tell you, being down on the ground, there was so much security. Even finding a way to get in was very complicated because they were taking all these precautions for the protests. The good news is Tulsa was the first step back, and there are many more rallies to come. I'm sure they'll figure out how to even work the crowd better in this new order we're in with the Chinese coronavirus and all of these rioters around. So be of good cheer. The good news is there was no lack of enthusiasm in Tulsa. People are still really wanting to get out of their houses, get back to work, and also show their support for President Trump. And it was my honor to be able to do that. And we have a great show for you today. We have 2 great members of Congress. We have Paul Gosar from Arizona and Devin Nunes with us today. Congressman Gosar, as I said, is from Arizona. He has a lifetime A rating from the American Conservative Union. He takes the lead on so many issues that it's actually hard to have an interview with him because you don't know kind of where to start because he's involved in so many things. Dr. Gosar, thanks for being with us today.
Matt, thanks for having me on.
You and I even went overseas for CPAC.
Absolutely. It was fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself in Japan.
You're taking the conservative message everywhere. But in this country, and you heard what I said at the beginning of the show, in this country, we got real issues. And we got real issues with the Supreme Court, which continues to kind of foil our not conservative agenda, because that's not their job. Their job is a constitutional order, right? Yep. That's their job. And we continue to have missteps with Republican appointees, most especially the Chief Justice, John Roberts. Tell us your reaction to what they decided on DACA.
Well, very disturbing, Matt. We see a Chief Justice who wants to legislate instead of looking at the application of the rule of law. When you look at it from the standpoint, this was a slam dunk because Barack Obama, when he implemented this, he said he didn't even have the power to do that. And then when he went through it, he actually put it in place erroneously. For example, you have to fund a project. Well, if Congress hasn't specifically enumerated that, particularly in immigration, Article 1, Section 8 gives that power to Congress. But what President Obama did is he actually took money from Homeland Security, State Department, and the Department of Justice to fund this, which is a violation of what they call the Anti-Deficiency Act, which is part of the applied rules in which something can go forward. So from the very get-go, it should have been a slam dunk. No, should not have even been a case.
So let's go through this. So Obama is elected to the presidency, and the left immediately starts pressuring Obama to do something about the Dreamers.
Right.
And Obama says over and over and over again, President Obama says, I do not have the constitutional authority to, by executive order, do anything. Congress has to do something on the Dreamers. And throughout his first term, the left starts calling Obama the deporter in chief because they feel like he's done such a bad job on actually, fulfilling this kind of radical agenda of no borders. But what does he do? He eventually decides, because it's in his political interest, after spending years saying he doesn't have the executive ability to do anything on DACA, he then does it.
Yeah.
So which Barack Obama was right?
Well, Barack Obama, according to John Roberts, is still probably wrong, but they want Donald Trump to go through the process of decommissioning it in a much better fashion. That's sad, because what it was a punt. They want to push this off until after the election, particularly when they're hoping that Joe Biden wins the election, and then this becomes a non-issue because they're going to move forward with more than just Dreamers in regards to immigration. So that's what's sad, and we see this now over and over again with John Roberts, with Obamacare, the DACA, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I mean, over and over again. Now we're seeing legislation from the bench. If he wants to do that, hang up his black robe, come out, get some signatures, get on the ballot, and get voted in like I do. I'm responsible to the voters. He's not in this case.
Yeah, and I think that's awfully important for folks to understand. The other thing that's important for folks to understand is you're an outstanding conservative member of Congress. You probably would have some differences with the president on the Dreamers. The president has said publicly in two major ways that he'd like to find a way to have a legislative solution. But Nancy Pelosi will not come to the table, and Charles Schumer will not come to the table, because one of the things the president has said is, I'm willing to look at some immigration if I can get all the funding for the wall. Well, they say we don't want to have that conversation. So the president says, okay, well, then I'm going to start basically deporting people or taking away any legal status they have. It's the only chit he has to get the negotiation started. And now John Roberts has come in and taken away the only chit the president had. And now it's going to be next to impossible for him to get additional funding without going through the steps he's had to, which have been clever, but not as much money as we want for the wall.
Absolutely. But that shows you the two dichotomies here. Barack Obama didn't have to have permission from Congress and the money.
That's right.
Donald Trump has to follow the opposite protocol. He's got to follow the Administrative Procedures Act to a T. He's got to define the Anti-Deficiency Act. That's what they're holding over him. And that's what's so sad about this. Louise Brandeis, a former Supreme Court justice, said it very aptly. In a government of laws, the government will be imperiled if it doesn't uphold the law scrupulously. If the government violates the law, it invites every man to be a law unto themselves. It invites anarchy. Matt, here we go. We got anarchy.
We got anarchy. Let me ask you a question. You serve with, obviously, Republicans and Democrats. As I said, you're a doctor. You're not a lawyer. But when you look at this, do you ever ask yourself, where's the honest liberal? I mean, there are times I've disagreed with the president. I bet there are times you and I have disagreed on things, because that's how the human being is. You have your own idea of things. Where's the honest liberal who ever disagrees with this radical socialist Democratic Party? Where's the honest judge that sometimes breaks away from the pack and says, actually, the Constitution doesn't say that?
Matt, I don't know, because when you look at what happens with Nancy Pelosi, everybody walks in step with her. She rules with an iron fist. In fact, right now, the House isn't even in session, because she's dictating all the premises of the legislative body. And I don't see anybody barking. I don't see anybody saying, hey, this is not right. This is not constitutionally right. In fact, what I see is opposite. I'm a member of the Natural Resources Committee. They've had committee hearings without even calling the Republicans to tell them about it. Total violation of the rule of law in the House. Over and over again, we see this. And then we've got voting by proxy. Oh my God! I mean, this is incredulously anti-constitutional. But I haven't found anybody that a Democrat that has stood up and spoken out.
And you bring up the proxy voting. That's something ACU is really going to get out there on. Nancy Pelosi only needs to string together like 20 Democrats to go to the floor to now literally change laws in this country. How could that be right?
It's not right. The last time we were voting as a unit, 79 Democrats stayed home. I mean, we're asking
because of health reasons, but the real reason is they're giving Nancy Pelosi their vote.
That's exactly right. But the thing about it is, you know, if you want America to get back to work, don't you think we ought to go back to work?
Right.
Yeah. Set the example. Walk a mile in my moccasins, but I'll lead the way. It's incredible that we don't have that.
Dr. Gosar, there's a lot of talk about polling with the presidential race, that the president trails Joe Biden by a wider margin than we've seen, knowing that the president will probably trail all of his opponents the whole time during his races because of fake news leads to fake polls, by the way. And he has a lot of supporters that don't want to be as public. What's going on in Arizona? Because they're saying, oh, Arizona is a state that could flip. I don't think that's right. What is your feeling?
I don't think it will either. There's massive infusion of money into Arizona, just like Texas. The Soros group, there's, Eric Holder's been in here with money. So they've been really definitely trying to get out the vote. But my district is very solid Republican. And the president and candidates like Martha McSally have to build in my district to offset some of the Maricopa and southern parts of the state. But I don't think it's in play. You know, I've had Democrats that come up to me over and over again and say, listen, when I'm polled, I'll tell them what they want to hear. Right. That way they leave me alone. I don't want to be harassed. I don't want to get phone calls. I don't want to get threats. But I have no intention of voting Democrat. And in this age, our mantra is, if you vote Democrat, you're voting for Nancy Pelosi, you're voting for Chuck Schumer, you're voting for communism, which is not part of this country.
Well, and the other thing, I think the other trend that I think has a lot of people of faith who might be Democrats, people who love America who might be Democrats. If you're a cop or you have a family member who's a cop and you love this country, they're watching these statues of a saint of the Catholic Church, Junipero Serra, being ripped down, someone who helped Christianize America. This is some radical stuff. This can't be popular with kind of like middle of the road voters in Arizona.
No, and what they see, Matt, is they see the same similarities as what happened in Russia and Germany and China, where you destroy the symbols of your past. These are tokens to be able to understand that we were once further back, and we've made strides to make us a more perfect union. That's the trouble that we see here. Lawlessness. I mean, everything we've seen is culminating in this lawlessness. And you look at the previous administration, whether it be Fast and Furious, Benghazi, IRS, the unmasking, the email transgression. You had Russiagate, Ukrainegate, you have Obamagate. I mean, look at the fundamentals of the law were chastised and taken a serious hit on. So America has got to figure this out. And I think November 3rd is going to be a very big day because I don't think the American public wants what they see on television. This last weekend, either 16 or 18 people were killed in Chicago again.
Yeah, tragic.
It's tragic. And then you got CHOP. I guess the only thing that I have in common with CHOP is they agree on borders. Yeah,
borders and IDs.
That's right.
Have to have those.
And the Second Amendment.
Hey, Dr. Gosar, what do you think? CPAC CHOP, should we do it? We'll get you extra security, okay?
That's right. That would be interesting to go through, though, Matt.
Well, I think we're going to be winning in some precincts and towns and cities and doing much better because they're getting to see the full kind of like the full Monty, the full enchilada of what this socialist vision is for the country. And it's not good. And it's not good for the marginalized, the poor, the immigrant in the big city. When murders go up and your family isn't safe, I can't see how that benefits anyone. And we're not ever going to be for that. And we know you're not going to be for that either. Congressman Paul Gosar, as I said, an A rating for his tenure in the Congress from the American Conservative Union. Thanks for joining us today on CPAC Live.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
And we're gonna show you a quick take on the president's spectacular speech in Tulsa. He went 2 hours, or almost 2 hours. At CPAC, we were very nervous that he was going to eclipse his record of 2 hours and 20 minutes from a speech the president gave at CPAC a couple of years ago. But we still have the title. Watch the president here, and we'll be right back on the other side with Devin Nunes.
2 weeks ago, job numbers came in. The single biggest number in the history of our country. Last week, retail sales numbers came in. Retail sales, the single greatest number in the history of our country.
What a great clip of the president at the Tulsa rally. As I said, it was my honor to be there with him. There were so many great lines in that speech. Of course, my favorite is when he threw the cup of water across the stage, because the fake news is accusing the president of not being able to drink water. And he so effectively and humorously explained the reason he does that is he's trying not to spill on his very expensive red or blue tie. So anyway, it was great to be there for the speech. And as I said, we've got another great crusading conservative congressman on the show today, Devin Nunes. Congressman Nunes, thanks for being with us on CPAC Live.
It's great to be with you, Matt. I didn't know that was why he did that with his hand. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so he said he called Melania after he gave this great speech at West Point, and she explained to him that you're trending because, and he's like, that's awesome. They loved my speech. She goes, no, you're trending because they said you couldn't walk down the ramp. And he couldn't walk down the ramp because he had slippery shoes on, and he was really afraid that he would do a Jerry Ford and fall over. And he said that the only worst thing that the news could cover is that he would fall on his you-know-what.
Well, and you know what I always say is whatever they accuse you of doing, that's what they're doing. So obviously Biden hiding in his basement, nobody's hardly ever seen him in the last year. He can't hardly go out on the campaign trail. So of course they'd have to accuse Trump of, having Alzheimer's and not being able to function properly, physical handicaps. Makes perfect sense to me, Matt. That's normally what they do.
So the speech, he was accused of having Parkinson's. That was why he was trending, because it was like fear that Trump has Parkinson's. So it was great. He drank the water and threw it across the stage. It was awesome. So in this era of fake news where you can get online, go to your favorite website, try to figure out what happened the day before, even trying to figure out what happened with the Tulsa rally, we're all faced as conservatives with constant false reporting. And in order to counter that reporting, people like you get out there on social media and say, here's what really happened in the halls of Congress. Here's what's really going on with the Durham report. Here's what's really going on. Don't listen to Adam Schiff. But now even that voice, which is so important on these social media platforms, we could lose that too.
Yeah. So it's important to understand, after the 2016 election, the Democratic Party and their apparatus realized it's not enough to control 90% of the media, which today they dominate. It's not even like it used to be 10 years ago that 90% of the journalists, those that are creating the content that people read in the United States and around the world, 90% were liberal. What we now have moved to is that 90% are activists working for the most part for either companies that are owned by billionaire leftists or billionaires that have their own agenda, or for companies that are, legacy media that are essentially going broke, right, over the long run, or their revenues are going down. But it's become an arm of the Democratic Party, 90%. What they realized after the 2016 election, even with all of that, even being able to build narratives, whether it was that Trump was, something was going to do bad things with Putin. Remember that? That was the narrative the media was building all the way through that. We didn't know they were actually investigating the Trump campaign. They were able to, every day was a new bombshell on the Trump candidacy back in 2016. Even with all of that, and even though Trump didn't even have any money, okay, what they realized is that Trump and the Trump campaign and Republicans and conservatives were going to these free spaces on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, especially those two, and they could exchange ideas freely. And the government actually has given those companies that are creating these public spaces on the internet special powers, as long as they don't create content. Well, that's no longer what they decided to do. So after the 2016 election, Zuckerberg and Obama are ironically, and I think I talked about this at CPAC if I remember right, they're the ones who coined the term fake news. We had never heard fake news before. It was kind of a new term. Nobody had really ever used that term. So for 2 weeks after the election, Obama and Zuckerberg are saying, well, it was really fake news was the reason that Trump won and Hillary lost. It was because these Americans were getting all this garbage. And then, of course, a month later, it turned into not only was it fake news they were getting, but it was Russian fake news they were getting, right? It was the Russians that were doing all of this. So at that point, now, of course, what happened is that Trump turned around and just put it onto them and said, no, you guys are fake news. And all of us, the conservatives and Republicans, were like, no, you guys are the ones that are fake news. You can have example after example daily, practically, of fake news.
Yeah.
So they decided that 90% of the content development by the Democratic Party, essentially, the echo chamber, as the Obama administration, was not enough. So what's happened is that Facebook, Twitter, and Google, the three big tech oligarchs, they're controlling everything. They've created new algorithms. I don't Google anymore. I tell people don't Google because you're going to get garbage.
So what do you use?
Well, I use DuckDuckGo, which is not great either.
Yeah.
But Google is the worst. Google's controlling now. I put this out yesterday on Parler, which we'll come back to that.
I like Parler.
Yeah, Parler's the only place now that's actually one of those town squares where everybody can go and not be and not be censored by them. So what's happened here, Matt, just to kind of cut to the chase, is that we're not able to reach, Republicans are not able to reach over 50% of the American population on any given day. So over 50% of the population. And then look, the left and the Democrats know this. They have better numbers than even I do. When you have 92% of the searches, this is what I put on Parler, going through Google, all right? And then a lot of times what pops up first is Wikipedia, which is total trash and garbage, okay? Try going on there and editing. Conservatives, we have a lot of people said, hey, I tried to, go onto your Wikipedia page and put the truth in. I mean, Wikipedia is fiction, right?
Don't look at Matt Schlapp or Mercy Schlapp on Wikipedia. You won't be able to eat lunch.
Right. And the same thing if you look up me. So you can't. So Google's doing that. Twitter, as you know, shadow ban me. They throttle you. Facebook is doing the same thing. Facebook, which used to be it's really a nice platform. It's almost become useless because once you and I like to use Facebook a lot just to kind of keep up with my friends from high school or my family members or what have you. Now you're lucky to even see that because they populate it with garbage. And then anytime even though I've got huge followings on Facebook, I'll put something out there and share it. If it's at all even remotely political, I'm lucky if I get 2 likes. It's almost as like nobody can see it. So look, the problem here is that over half of Americans today, and this is going to be Republicans' challenge in the future and this Trump campaign, is that you can't even reach them. And in fact, the only time we were able to reach them is when, ironically, during the impeachment hoax, when the networks, the dummy networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, ran us live. Yep. And it was really the first time that the American people got to see Republicans uncensored. We got more time in 1 week than we got in 20 years. And you got to see the difference between me and the House Intelligence Committee Republicans who have really been run.
How did the American people react to seeing you all counter what Schiff was doing? They reacted pretty damn well.
That's exactly right, which is why after 5 or 6 days of it, they turned it off. ABC, NBC, CBS said, "Whoa, we're getting demolished here. The polls are dropping." It's because the American people saw that, wow, wait, there's a bunch of the Republicans make some sense. They're like younger people, young women on the committee. They're talking sense. And meanwhile, you had the Democrats who would talk about conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory, and making no sense. None of it made any sense because, of course, it was all made up by them. So anyway, I went on that long riff just to say how important this is going in an election. I would say that our only opportunity really to exchange ideas and communicate with one another, where we know that we're not going to be censored, is Parler, which is kind of a combination. I like to say it's a combination of some of the qualities of Twitter, some of the qualities of Instagram. But at least we're not going to be censored there, and I'm just urging everybody to go there. And I'm hoping that I don't have to use Twitter, sooner rather than later, hopefully.
So look, I just want to summarize what you said on the major left-wing Silicon Valley companies, and there are a few that are also well known, but the ones that you mentioned, what's key is Facebook actually started the soonest censoring by getting liberal groups to filter posts from people like yourself to see if it wasn't fake news, right? So they started this all the soonest or the earliest. But what we're seeing from Twitter especially now is just outright blocking conservative voices. I know what happens to me if I send a tweet out that really takes off. It'll take off with pro-Trump retweets and likes, but something strange happens if it really takes off that way. Like all of a sudden that stops abruptly, and then you will just get pummeled by the whole rest of Twitter. So there's clearly somebody moving things around, and so it's important for our viewers to understand that. And I'll give everyone an update on how you sign up onto Parler, Congressman Nunes, because I don't even know if I have my account yet, because we keep intending to do it, but it's about time we stop talking about these things and start doing these things.
Yeah, and one of the things when I went onto Parler about 4 or 5 months ago, Matt, that one of the things that I discovered is there were people that were there, good-hearted, great Americans who have been banned from all the platforms. And it was so sad. It was really remarkable, to see, these are not people that are hiding. They have their name. And as you know, if you're using your name, you can be sued for defamation, slander, and libel in this country. So I always put in my mind, I'm like, hey, if you're out there on social media using your own name, and there were so many of those people that were on Parler when I first got on there, and people were like, wow, I'm so glad you're here because I can't use Twitter. I can't use Facebook. I can't go on and give my opinion any longer. And now just over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, especially after they went in and censored the president of the United States, okay? I mean, it's just unimaginable, because it's fake news story after fake news story, and then they censor our stuff. Now, Parler just keeps growing, and I find it to be, it's really liberating to know, to have that comfort level that whatever I put out there is not going to be censored, right? If you follow me, you're going to see it in real time. And that's what Facebook and Twitter used to be before they started, basically becoming content developers, which is why they shouldn't have these special deals from the government.
Well, the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, talked about this on Maria Bartiromo's Sunday show, that they've got this kind of carve out in the law, which they call Section 230, which gives them these special rights. Does that prevent an American who's wronged by censorship or whatnot from taking a legal action against that company?
Well, look, I'm suing Twitter so far successfully. Now, that doesn't mean that every American can sue Twitter, but I have said very publicly that people that have the wherewithal, we have to go against these companies, because it's not like
the high bar to win, right? That's what the setup of the law, it makes it harder for you to win in these cases, right?
Well, the key is that the key is this: the carve out, the 230 carve out, was done by Congress back in the mid-90s in order to create remember the internet superhighway?
Yes.
That was unimpeded. Everybody could go there. That's why. So you didn't want to create a system where if Matt Schlapp and Devin Nunes went onto a platform and we got into a he said, she said, and I accused you of, some kind of crime or something.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make it so that company was liable for what you said, right? Or for whatever crime was created on the platform. So for all these years, essentially, that went pretty much unimpeded. But the last 5 years, that's collapsed. The last year, it's gotten so bad that they don't even care. They're brazen about what they do. I mean, they will censor the president of the United States, and they don't care. So I believe that they're not even following the letter of the law. When you take I call them tech oligarchs for a reason, because they're really monopolies. Even when startups come up, they buy them or they throttle them down. They ensure that nobody can even get into that. It's quite the opposite. You now have a monopoly guarding the internet superhighway, so that the only people that can get in there are left-wingers and left-wing fact checkers. So I think they're vulnerable under the law as it is today. But you just have to be able to go to court and hopefully the judicial system, which I know everybody's frustrated right now with it, but hopefully we have enough good judges out there across the country who realize that no, this is not, Congress did not intend to allow 3 tech oligarchs to be able to decide who gets onto the internet superhighway or not.
Sounds like a lot of collusion between the Democratic Party and these left-wing oligarchs, Congressman.
Well, you're exactly right, Matt. It's more, it's definite collusion. Absolutely.
We love what you do in Congress. I'm so glad that you've been leading on so many things, including making sure that the Obama administration, people who did wrong, which I think went very high, are held accountable. Thank you for all you have done. We've given you some of CPAC's highest awards because of your work, and it's wonderful to hear about your lawsuit. Can we have you back on as things develop in the lawsuit?
Absolutely. I look forward to it. And of course, I always appreciate the opportunity to be at CPAC and I think and be interviewed by you. Last time I was interviewed by you. So it doesn't get better than that.
We always have fun. And please never give Nancy Pelosi your proxy. OK, that's one thing we got to make sure.
that won't happen.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another great episode of CPAC Live. It was great to talk to Devin Nunes and Paul Gosar. We have great champions in Congress. We actually have great members of the Supreme Court. Not everyone. We have great opportunities this November. I actually feel more optimistic about the fact that we're going to be successful in November. But the challenges, this kind of network that's against us between the Democratic Party and these, as Devin Nunes said, these left-wing social media oligarchs, fake news, and all the stuff that we see reported on TV and in print. And unfortunately, a lot of other entities funding the most radical parts of this new socialist party, the Democratic Socialist Party. It's unbelievable what we're facing. And the only way we're going to win is if good people like you continue to stay strong and do the right thing. And we're rededicating ourselves at the American Conservative Union to make sure that we think through methodically everything we're doing with the resources we raise and the minutes we have every day to work to make sure we do everything possible to save the country. And you watching and being with us in the foxhole gives us great inspiration. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of CPAC Live, and we'll see you again Wednesday.